Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon whenever you're watching this video. My name is Professor Forrest and today I will show you the best Grace builds in Season 14. We finally know the item changes for the next batch as well, and since I'm not expecting any big changes after this, at least related to Grace items, this is the perfect time for a build guide. If you don't want to miss guides, WOD reviews, coaching videos, and more, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. But let's talk about some items that people might think are good. Thunderous Sky is one of the items people are trying out on Graves, but you don't want to buy this as your first item. Ability Haste is decent, but HP is a stat on which Graves doesn't want to spend early on because he prefers AD. As a third item, it might be good, but I will talk about the Bruiser build later. The next item is Eclipse, and I decided to change it again. It doesn't give lethality, and even though the 70 AD sounds great, but because of the range penalty, this is an item you want to avoid. The other item I suggest you to avoid, at least as a first item, is Infinity Edge. Even though it's not a mythic anymore and gives really good stats, you don't want to buy it as a first item, and I will talk about Crit Graves as well. Enough talking about the items, let's see the builds instead. I will start with the C tier, which stands for Crit Graves, because Crit Graves is awful this year. Like I said, Infinity Edge as a first item sucks, and because of that you want to go Collector first into Infinity Edge and then Lord Dominic. Your fourth item could be a Shield Bow or Mav, and as your last item, Bloodthirster. As always, with Crit Graves, you will run Fleet as your rune setup with Inspiration secondary. This is just an example of Crit Graves if you want to try it, but I really don't recommend it. Riot really messed up the crit items, and that's why most AD carries are running lethality if they can, or go on hit builds. The next build will be B tier, and even though I enjoy Bruiser Graves with the item changes, I'm still trying to find a good enough Bruiser build for Season 14. But every other build after this just feels so much better. Anyways, let's see the items. First, because we will have a pretty weak early game with this setup, we look to start with Doran's Blade. Our first item and the only decent Bruiser item you should start with is Trinity Force. After Trinity, we want Black Cleaver, and if you run this build last season, then you probably remember that our setup has been the same so far. But the third item this year will be Thunderous Sky. By the time we get our third item, we will have enough base area to make the healing noticeable. The fourth item will be Sterak's Gauge, and your last item should be Frozen Heart most of the time, but of course you can change it to Randuin's if it's needed, or Spirit Visage, which has great synergy overall with your build. For this, the rune setup should be the one on your screen. Honestly, this year I'm running every build with Red Smite, but for this one, green is a decent choice. I know this will be a surprise for many of you, especially considering how strong lethality is, but in the A tier I have lethality Grace. My reason for this is that it's his hardest build, and it's not a build you will run every game. It's amazing against the right team, but most of the time you won't run into 5 squishy members. So your build will be the following: Yuma's Ghostblade, Corrector, and Opportunity. As your fourth item, I prefer something more defensive like Mav, Shield Bow, or Edge of Night. For the last item, you can go Seritas if you need even more pen, or Infinity Edge is a great item later on, paired with Corrector. If you need more survivability, then I recommend Bloodthirster or Guardian Angel. Some of the items you can try are Hubris, and you want to buy this as your first item, and it can help you snowball really hard, in which case you swap this with Yumus, but you still can go with Yumus second, but I prefer to skip it and just go Collector instead. The other item is Cyclo Sword, and the good thing about this item is that you can buy it as a second or third option as well, which honestly doesn't really matter. It's a good alternative to Collector, especially after the upcoming Collector nerf. But you lose the execution of course, which helps a lot if we run lethality. As I mentioned earlier, for your Jenga pet you want to take red, and for your rune setup this year we will have Fleet Footwork. I don't recommend running Dark Harvest, not even with this setup. For your secondary you can run Free Boots and Cosmic, or take Domination with Eyeball and Treasure Hunter. For your stat chart, take Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Scaling Heart. And the final build in this video, and the best one you can run in Season 14, is really similar to the lethality version, but this one is more consistent and you can run this build every game. The build is Yumus, Collector, and Black Cleaver. I know about the Yumus and Collector nerfs, but even after the nerfs, I think this will stay his best build. You will have enough damage to deal with squishy champs and of course to kill bruisers, while having enough movement speed from the item to catch people or escape tricky situations. Black Cleaver and the items you will buy after your core setup will help you survive with the extra HP and defensive stats most fights. As your fourth item, I prefer Shield Bow, but considering how broken mages are, you're forced most of the time to go Mav as your fourth item. And for your last item, I prefer Guardian Angel, but Bloodthirster or Infinity Edge work really well. well. What you can do is sell your collector for Bloodthirster and buy Infinity Edge as your last item. I know I said crit grave sucks, and I mean it, but 2 crit items is the sweet spot for graves, and full crit is just bad. And it solves the biggest weakness of crit graves, which is survivability, while your spells deal decent amount of damage and you are not relying on your auto attacks only. So I recommend having 2 crit items at max, collector and something else. If I already have a shield bow and collector, then I prefer going GA, since most likely I'm facing a heavy AD team and the extra armor helps a lot. Again, you will take Red Smite and your rune setup is a fleet page with inspiration second. So this was my build guide for Graves in Season 14 for patch 14.3. As always, if something changes that will impact Graves and his builds, I will update you guys with the best setup. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to comment, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, see you all in the next one.